Thanks everybody for coming to our talk. You might know myself, Gabriel, and Karl. That's not the current slide. We'll start later on that. So we're talking about smarter workflows and better tool integration with ProBuilder. So we're going to look at a bit of how we've been rebuilding the foundation within Unity so it's easier to make really good custom tools. I hope there's a few asset store developers here or just custom studio tool developers and also artists who are using those, and you can hopefully see how this will help you and then also push other developers to use this because we really need it to become the standard. The more people do it, the better it gets, or the more people use the pattern. So again, myself, Gabriel Williams, hello. I don't know, 10 years ago or something, started building up a little tool called ProBuilder with Karl and ended up working at Unity to integrate that more and then slowly push for more and more complex, at least level design oriented tooling in Unity, and then kind of moved into the foundations because, as Karl and I learned while doing lots of asset store development, it's pretty tricky to build really good tools inside Unity. And as we learned once we got into Unity, that's because it's just sort of a unknown, bit of a Wild West land to begin with. So we've been working on that, and I'll show how that goes. Karl, go ahead.
I'll introduce myself at the
Okay,
next
Karl will
part.
introduce himself at the end. He's Karl. Okay, onward. So the couple of things we'll be looking at, again, as I mentioned, ProBuilder's new contextual workflows, and then that's both how you can use them as an artist and also how you can too as a developer creating. And we really want to push on that, but not too much so we bore one half of the room too much. And then Karl will talk about what he's been doing using ProBuilder from the outside to integrate with his own new work. So starting off, just to make myself feel a little happy, we had a recent quote from Tiago Klafka on Twitter that I think really nailed it well, and I'll tell you why. So he happened to be upgrading his project, working with new tools, and at first said, hey, this is actually not great. It was a Unity forum post some of you might have seen, where did all the tools go? Why is everything different? And then once we were able to indicate to him, oh, here's where the things are and here's why, he ended up kind of updating his thoughts to this. The new ProBuilder is beautifully integrated into Unity, no icons anymore. All the actions are contextual, etc. I kind of paraphrased, sorry, Tiago. But the point that I really liked about this that he made was at no point in his discussion about it or his post did he actually mention any new features. And that is perfect because we didn't add any new features, maybe one. But what really made it work was kind of the invisibility of it now just feels integrated. It works. It doesn't seem like just another asset store tool that's been kind of taped and glued and duct taped into the system, which has been the case up till now with even internal items and definitely external. So I really liked how he kind of accidentally hit on that. So we'll talk about how we got there. And again, how you could do it yourself. And there's a few parts. We'll skip through each of these and I'll do a live demo. So you'll get to the fun part there soon. So we made it smarter. I'd say it's the right tools and actions at the right time, faster, a lot fewer clicks and a lot less UI. So the UI is, I think, good just so that it's less to look at and less to brain overload. I think that's a really important thing, especially people starting out. More reliable, of course, so removing a lot of old tech debt. That's important to you as well. If you're building your own, you can just use what we've built and easier to learn. So your users are going to have a much better time, and you yourself, if you're an artist, actually, I'd like a quick show of hands. How many people here are here as an artist to use ProBuilder, and how many are developers who are here to like create their own tools? Maybe. Okay. All right. It seemed about 60-40. So that's pretty good. It's pretty good. All right. So I'm going to go through a few of these, and then again, I'll do that live demo, which I think will be the fun part. Also, how many people here have already used PV6? Do we have just a few? Okay, good. All right. All right. Mary, you don't count in the back, but thanks. You do. But of course you have. Okay. So the edit modes, we've entered a new ability. So when you're in Unity and something is editable, you can just select it and see, hey, it's editable. I don't know if I have a laser pointer, so I'll just dance on the stage. That comes up immediately. You can edit it. That'll work for anything that's editable. So again, if you're developing your own tool for editing, whatever it might be, splines, meshes, those are ours, other things, it'll work. And then you also have component tools. Anytime that you select a thing that has those tools, they pop right up in the same row. And finally, I think most importantly, tool settings. In the past, everybody's had to kind of put together their own custom pile of settings. It's usually an extra panel somewhere. Now it's all showing up in the same place. Creation is a lot faster. So we have kind of, I'd say, just hijacked what used to be the old custom editor tools for creation tools. Now you can put anything there. Shortcuts, standard shortcuts for enter and exit, for things that otherwise need to be custom, like ProBuilder used to have its own conflicting shortcuts for editing. I'm going to go through these faster than expected so we can get to that live demo. And contextual actions, you can now right-click in the scene view. How many people knew that by chance? I know it's mind-blowing, right-click in the scene view, cool, okay. So that will also work, you may not have known, within an edit mode. So scene view, you have game object actions, edit modes will let you, say, have actions for vertices or spline points or anything that you want. And then options, so we also introduced the ability to, when you do an action, you might remember an old ProBuilder, you'd have to like choose bevel or something like this, pick a number, hit it. Oh shoot, not the right one, go back over and over and over again. Let's see a few nods of pain, sorry. So now you don't have to do that. You can live edit it, and that again is a generic thing that anyone can implement. So if you're making a tool, you should be able to use this. If you're an artist using a tool in Unity and you don't see this, you should yell at whoever made that tool or nicely ask them to upgrade to this. And lastly, well, not quite lastly, but a big part of it is it's just a lot more reliable, no more conflicts. Whoever's building that tool set can use our work and can send bugs to us instead of having to fix them themselves. That should be good. And it's just a lot easier to learn. Once you've learned one item, for example, ProBuilder or Splines, you automatically know the other and anyone else that comes up. So I'm going to go into that live demo now that I zoomed through these as promised. And let's do that. Come on, laptop, come back to life. You pushed the guest HDMI too soon. We've got a black screen. Look at that. Okay. I was very worried for a moment, I'll admit. I've gone through 3 laptops today. Okay. I'm going to do a bit of a side comparison between each, so I think it makes a little more sense this way. If you remember old ProBuilder, so I've got the PB old here. Once you've installed it, this is what you have. You have no change, honestly. This Unity is exactly the same. In the new version, what you now have is as soon as you install it, again, you've got creation tools that appear right in the main tools window. And so if I right click and change this to panel mode, again, this is your tools overlay, bring that back to the way it was. So as soon as you install ProBuilder, you immediately have creation tools versus in the old one, you might remember you have to know and look up documentation. That you go to tools and then ProBuilder and then ProBuilder window, and then you've got this big clunky thing you've got to put somewhere, let's say there maybe, and scroll around, and now you've run out of screen space and you have this thing in the way too. So lots of fun in the good old times. We had good reasons for it, but now it's right here. And these also have a new ability. You've got like a custom flyout menu, actually pretty standard for other apps as well. I can pick, maybe I'd like to draw this and just immediately start drawing it out and wait for the shaders to compile. Yes, fantastic. So just as quick as that, really the point was at least as soon as it's installed, people can start immediately creating and working so you can get to your creative hopes there real quickly. And then again, over here showing the same thing, I'd have to open up this tool. I've got some things. This is just becoming a mess on a small screen already. And again, draw it in. I'll have something there so we can demo it. The next part is if you wanted to start editing that. So in the old version, you would hopefully have seen this UI. I'll now go to full screen mode because it's just impossible otherwise. You'd have this UI up here, custom UI to pick different modes. Problem is, as I've demonstrated right now, is I've activated that, but I don't actually have anything I can work on, right? So I click on vertices, but drag selecting isn't working. I'm getting some errors, fun stuff. I can't click on these and do anything. They're selected. This doesn't work. I'm just bashing on my own tool, well, our own tool, so it's okay. If it sounds like I'm being negative. Now the way it works is a bit different, and I think really excitingly better. So nothing selected. You can see in the tools it says, nothing to do. You don't have anything selected. You're in game object mode. As soon as I select a editable object, it shows up with this. And it says, hey, this can be edited. We're kind of working with orange as a color to help with that. Can't just stick to only colors, but it hopefully helps a bit. So that's selected. It says you can edit this. I click on it and I go right into edit mode. So nothing in my way, no custom UI, no need to kind of figure that out, dig around. And then I have access to the same edit modes and such, so I can do that as I'd like. And if I try to select on something else, I think I might have turned off my gizmos. No, they're just in 3D mode. Okay, so if I click on this sunlight or try to, it just won't do it, but it still doesn't boot me out of the mode that I was in before. So it's just kind of keeping me safe so I don't get locked out of that. If I do something like click on a different thing, an actual game object, it exits that mode. So now it just works. I have the proper tools for that. And if I go back here, again, I can go back to editing. So as a developer, this means you don't have to worry about handling all this complex stuff. As a UX designer, or either you're for your own custom work, you also don't have to worry about thinking about solutions to this and how it may or may not work. It just does as long as you use this system, and there's a real nice API and such for it. Hopefully nice, that's his job. Was his job. Anyway, okay, so the next part is, again, we have that way of actions. Let's go back to the old one again. Nope, that's too soon for that. There we go. So if you wanted to do something to one of these points, let's say take this face and extrude it upward, you would again have to figure out how to do that. If you got lucky, you would scroll through this giant list and figure out that we meant red actions mean for geometry versus these other things do lots of other things. And you'd hit plus here, you get this big old pop-up and you do all this stuff and hit extrude, and hopefully that was the exact right number. But again, you have to dig through, find that, even know that you need that window open, etc. At any point, if you close it, you got a problem. In the new one, it's just on a right click. So I'll go back just a step actually and show, so oops, here in the just game object mode, if I have this selected or anything else, right click, again, very fancy. I can now right click in the scene and I have actions, regular actions for game objects. But if I do that on here, and I have some verts selected perhaps, and I right click, now I get actions for the vertices. So it's pretty basic. It just works. Hopefully what you'd expect from working in an OS or other parts of Unity, where you right click on the hierarchy or the project, etc., and you just get actions that go with it. Oops, I exited there. So I'll use a good example for this. If I select this edge, right click, go to bevel, and then change this. You can turn on live preview or off, and it'll do that. It's a little performance intensive sometimes, especially running on battery mode on a laptop. And then it just does it if you want, or you can hit cancel if you don't want to keep that. I'll hit confirm so it looks fancier. So that's, again, giving you access to those actions directly. It's available to you as that developer. If you want to just register your actions, it'll show which ones. Right now I don't have edges selected, so they're just not available to do. Once I do have it selected, I can do that. It takes care of everything for you. You don't have to be figuring out where to put those, as we, again, used to in a giant panel on the side, which I've hidden. Okay, so actions and edit modes. I think that's really the core of it that we have there. And I'm going to move back to the slides. Any questions on this real quick? Actually, I feel like it's a good point to take one right now. I'll just go. Yes, that's a good one. Thank you. So also as part of, again, it just being more generic, everything is available in generic shortcuts. If you go into edit shortcuts and then generally search for ProBuilder, you'll find any of the ProBuilder shortcuts, which are somewhere in this list. That search didn't go well. If you also just go to scenes or tools, you'll find, for example, I can set this one here. Let's call cycle game modes, tool modes, not mouse 0. I'll go for O and hope that works. And this one should be escape. Can't do it. Okay. Shift O. Different laptop. So if I have this object selected, and I'll quickly draw on a spline just so I have two things. So with a spline selected, again, it shows the edit mode, something that just works. Same thing. And then if I click onto the PB object, I can edit it, or I can use those shortcuts now. So I set it to that O will go in, or whatever shortcut you want will go into edit mode, escape will go out, and the same shortcut will also work for a spline. So as an artist, you select the thing, you just use a generic shortcut. You don't have to figure out the one per tool. As the creator of the tool, you don't have to think about that either. You just make sure you use that standard shortcut, and your users will just have that, and it'll work nicely. Okay, anything else real quick, or I'll just keep going along? More? Sorry, I don't understand. Mhm. Oh, yeah, like hitting the G key or something like that. Nothing quite that fancy, sorry.
You can, of course, do that yourself. There's nothing preventing you from doing so with the tool system. It's up to you.
Yeah. ProBuilder doesn't do that fancy, but yes, thanks, Karl. You can set it up. Oh, thanks. Okay, thank you. All right, I will jump back to the presentation. So we've hopefully proved out it's a better UI, it's easier to learn, it's faster, it's easier to build as well, all these things. And really most importantly, just the fact that once you learn one, you know all the others. And I think that's something new to Unity. It's going to cause a little bit of friction at first because it does require that people learn and understand there are basic patterns you can use, like the ability to right click in the scene, the shared shortcuts, the edit modes popping up in the tools there. I think people are still a little expecting everything to be custom. And as we get more and more tools into this ecosystem, it'll just become expected and it'll work a lot better that way. I did want to present, we had Stagart Creations made a really interesting creation already. So if anyone wanted to check this out, there's a QR code. This is an example of what you can do kind of going on top of the tool system. So he took the existing Spline solution and really just added onto it some extra parts so that it uses the data points, the basic manipulation tools, the overlays, all sorts of nice things that, again, is available to anyone to do because we now have this basic foundational part that allows you to just either build your own tool sets or add on them directly. Is everyone, how many people have tried the Spline system already? I can do a tiny demo of that. Okay, just a few. I'll go back real quick because I think I might have skipped over and I see I have a bit more time than I need. So let me go back there. So other than ProBuilder, using the system and being done added recently, we also have the new splines. I'll just delete that old one so that I can create a new one. Again, it will pop up in the creation menu here for you to create. If it doesn't, it's going to be under game object and then spline. I'm using a slightly ahead version here. So once you activate this, it allows you to draw in a basic spline. You can think of this if you're working in Figma, Photoshop, just about anything else. It's just a path. So if you click and drag, lets you set points with curves. If you just regular click, it's either going to be an automatic curve or just a linear point. And then the way we've built this is it's really just a spline. It's not much more, for better or worse. So it means it's a path. You can then apply things to it. As an artist, it means we have built in some options for just animating things along that. You have little arrows you can kind of see there telling you the flow direction of it. You can also add branches to this if you wanted to. So if I go into add and draw off, so it's not just a single direction spline. If you need something, move it around with a real quick sort of direct manipulation of parts, just click and drag. And I will actually add some items to it just because it's a good quick demo. So we have, let's see, a few that we added. Spline extrude is probably the easiest. So if you just wanted to real quick add in tubes, pipes, wires, something into your world, there we go, shaders, there you go. But again, you can also use it for more complex things. Animate along it, you can use it, you can animate the actual spline itself, you can instantiate if you wanted to make a pathway or anything. The purpose of this was it's very, very foundational and generic, so anybody can add to it. And again, that goes back to the presentation point of this, which, is there a way to replay that back forward? Right. So again, this is all using the basic spline system, and Stagart just added on their own extrude, their own instantiation, and other tools to it. So you can create these yourself, or you can hopefully find these on the asset store. Cool. Next. So in case you're interested, I'll go back. This is a video that I put up a while ago. I'm not going to play it here. You can, again, QR code this if you'd like, which kind of goes over in a bit of a rambly way, as usual, if you'd like to take a slower look at this, how to make better Unity tools using this system. So it'll go through the entire setup and process if you'd like to learn a bit more. Don't need to hear that. And then also a couple getting started links for, again, for both artists and for anyone who's a creator. So the first one up there, we've got updated documentation for ProBuilder 6, and you can also find more on splines up there. And below that, the contextual tooling system itself, which I'll do a quick note on as well via the HDMI. Just sharing my screen. So this is a new thing. If anyone's, how many are actually familiar with the Foundation's websites? Oh, I thought we'd get at least one hand. Okay. If you're a creator, this is a really good place to go, foundations.unity.com. And one of the items in it is patterns. So to help you kind of learn how to build your tool sets so that they will match the rest of Unity and feel really nicely integrated. Again, as an artist also, if you happen to look at this, use someone else's work and they're not matching this, then please go tell them to match it because it helps us. And you'll see there's a new item called contextual tooling here. And if you go through this, it's going to give you probably the best way to launch right in. So implementation references, API links, and then further down to just how to use it, what's meant for what, how to replicate things like the Spline workflow, the edit modes, all of this in here. So good place to look. I'd say this is where you really want to start if you would like to create your own tools. Definitely pick up that link. Again, on the presentation, it's just the lower QR code there, which hopefully are working for folks. Okay. That's me.
Yeah. Cool.
Again, we'll have little questions later. Don't worry. Karl will jump in and do his side.
Yes. Yeah. Take a bow. Thanks, Gabe. So as promised, I'll introduce myself now. So I'm Karl. I've built ProBuilder with Gabe. Joined Unity in 2016 or 17. I've spent the last 6 years building out tools, leading the scene tooling team. Recently left Unity to help a smaller mobile studio build out a user-generated content tooling. So that's what I'll be talking about today. So I'll first introduce the game. So the game I work on is called Highrise. I'll talk about our path to empowering user-generated content. I'll go into a little bit more detail about what that is. So that's what we call Highrise Studio. And then, of course, I'll talk about ProBuilder. So may have left Unity, but I'm still preaching the good word, as it were. So I'll just give you a quick trailer of what the game is. So just a side note, I always think it's really funny when you have these like intense music videos and then you transition right into a dry technical talk. So sorry, I have no transition, but a small joke. So yeah, Highrise is primarily a dress-up game, heavy emphasis on user interaction, or social interaction rather. There are a heavy element of user-generated content already. So most of our clothing content, or significant portion of it, comes from user ideas. So they will draw out clothing or accessories or pets, and then our internal artists will bring them to the game. This is quite popular already. We also have an in-app room builder. So rooms are what we call like the environments that you're seeing there. It's fairly basic, but there's a sizable portion of our user base that just builds these out. It's like a very creative endeavor. But there's not too much to do there. It's mostly static props. We do have some interactable elements, but they're very much hard-coded. So clearly there's an appetite for more user-generated content, and basically just getting more things into the game that come from our users and not us. Obviously, that's a bottleneck. Plus, people just like being creative. So the plan was we need to give people the ability to create new experiences. And we don't want to be the bottleneck. We want to empower people to have the tools to bring these things into the game themselves. We don't want them to be limited to whatever we can code for them. So we needed some way of introducing interaction. We wanted to transition away from an isometric camera to any kind of camera you'd like. So if you want to do 3D or some other kind of 2D camera, you're free to do so. And we really wanted to make sure that you could do interactive worlds. So not just static set pieces that you can wander around and interact with in some ways, but really make kind of whatever you'd like to build. So our first iteration of this was a standalone editor. So this was built in Unity, building with UI Toolkit. We needed some way of basically a DCC, so digital content creation tool, that was accessible. And this was quite neat, but ultimately it was not worth the cost of maintenance. And we would ultimately gain a lot more by transitioning these tools from our own standalone app to building on top of Unity, which was what we ended up doing. So this is Highrise Studio. It looks a lot like Unity because it is Unity. We have taken advantage of pretty much everything Unity has to offer in terms of tooling. So like we make use of the tutorial system. We have a custom layout that loads when you first open the project. We're using, of course, the tooling system where it makes sense. Most of the workflows you're used to with Unity will transition to Highrise Studio. In fact, almost everything, with some notable caveats. So at a high level, user onboarding looks like this. We have Highrise Studio Hub, which is our equivalent to Unity Hub. Just takes care of the automating the process of installing Highrise Studio, the package, downloads the Unity package for you, or Unity editor for you, and it manages templates. So again, very similar to what Unity Hub has. We have a similar repository of templates that users can build from. Once inside of Unity, you build out your game like you normally would. And then rather than compiling or dealing with build targets or any kind of process like that, instead we have the project upload to our servers where we then compile and distribute ourselves. So there's no point where you're ever having to deal with build configurations or like performance targets. That's taken care of by us. As mentioned, this is not quite vanilla Unity. We have our own asset catalog, as shown here in this GIF. Said it both ways. Don't. We have Lua scripting for interaction, so no domain reloads. You're never touching C#. It's our own fork of Luau, which is a fork of Lua, so like 3 generations deep. We have simplified menus, so we remove a lot of the clutter. Like we take out anything that doesn't make sense for our projects. As a result, it's a much more approachable experience coming into the editor. We have tools that validate your project, so making sure that you're staying under budget for like triangles, shaders, nothing's too expensive. We make sure you don't have any kind of invalid assets. Basically putting the editor on guardrails as much as we can. We have simulated virtual players, so looking very forward to Unity 6 upgrade. We're close, but we'll be able to take that out with our multiplayer support. And yeah, and then of course ProBuilder integration, which is what I'll spend the rest of the talk mostly speaking on. So content creation is difficult. Most of our user base are not developers. So the target audience here is very much people who played the game Highrise, not engineers or programmers who are looking to build games. Although, of course, you're welcome to. It's a very enjoyable experience not having to worry about a lot of the tedium that comes with normal development. So Unity is a traditional DCC, and that's not super approachable for a lot of people. So let's create some building blocks that make it easier to come into this as someone with no experience, but a passion and an idea to actually create something meaningful. And so within this domain specifically, 3D is a big challenge. Obviously, 3D modeling is scary. Blender has made great strides in the last years in terms of user friendliness, but still, it's intimidating. And I find that ProBuilder is a really good middle ground of just mildly intimidating, not exactly scary. It strikes a good balance between simplicity and ease of use and power. So for us, that was an obvious choice, especially in that we can ship it with the package. It's a dependency, so you get it right out of the box. So I'll walk through a demo. This is one of the templates prepared by our artists at Highrise, or Pocket Worlds rather. There's some blobs running around. There's a castle. And conveniently over here, we have an island that looks like it could use something on it. So rather than opening up some other DCC to build out a 3D model, I think I'll build it myself. So I'll open up ProBuilder, pick out a cylinder because I'm planning to build a turret, or tower or something like that. Can adjust the sides on the fly, so it's all interactive, very intuitive to work with. You see exactly what's happening. And then just using some simple commands, I think I only use extrude and scale here. You can create something that looks pretty neat. So just a disclaimer, I'm not an artist. This was me doing this. Yeah, so pretty quickly I go from 0 to having something that looks, if I may say so, pretty decent. Here I'm applying some textures, which again with ProBuilder is just drag and drop. It's the same Unity workflows you're used to. You may have noticed I opened up the Scene View context menu. It's hard to see on this screen, but I changed the texture size, or rather I changed the UV maps, but in terms of user interface, we're changing what the scaling looks like. And so this is actually something that's really nice. ProBuilder has, of course, all of their actions and menus already. We needed to expose more, and it turns out that's incredibly easy to do. I'll talk about it a little bit later. And so we'll skip ahead, show you the nav mesh baking and the light map baking. But there you go. The video is slightly sped up, but really it took me maybe 5 minutes to do this from scratch. So menu items are super powerful, and in Unity 6 they're even more powerful. So adding on our own tooling to what exists currently was just a matter of an attribute on top of a static method. I don't have access to the ProBuilder source code here. This is in our code base. So quite extensible, and it makes it very easy for us to make shortcuts for users, especially as you're working on your own games, you have needs that don't necessarily meet what ProBuilder was trying to do. It has to be a generic package for everybody. But it's very easy to extend and make it your own. So if you've ever worked with ProBuilder professionally, I'm assuming many of you are developers yourself. ProBuilder is quite good, it's very fast, has a lot of strengths. One of its weaknesses, however, is that it can be inefficient at runtime. Fortunately, it's very easy to fix, especially in our case where we own the build process, so to speak. So the entirety of our integration of ProBuilder consists of this one script. I think it's maybe 200 lines, a tad bit more. But all this does is goes through and cleans up meshes, removes duplicates, ensures that prefabs are referencing a single asset, and it makes sure that you're compiling to optimize the mesh. And then we strip out ProBuilder, and that's really all it takes to integrate ProBuilder into our workflows. So very, very simple. And I'll end with just some statistics because I think this is really cool. We launched in March, Highrise Studio as a beta, and just since then, we're seeing around 1,000 installs per week. We have over 1,500 unique creators, and then among them, more than 3,000 worlds created. And so it's just within a few months. And again, our user base is not developers or technical people per se. I mean, I'm sure many of them are. But people want to be creative, and giving them the tools to do so, we're seeing a really warm embrace, basically. So it's very cool to see. And with that, I'll hand back to Gabe to close us out.
Sure, that's good. All right. Thank you, Karl.